So, a new force emerges in Nigeria's opposition politics, one that could potentially reshape the battle for 2027. Supporters of Peter Obi and Rabiu Kwankwaso have come together to launch what they call a nationwide mobilization platform, the Obi Kwankwaso movement, positioning it as a unifying engine ahead of the crucial primaries of the African Democratic Congress, or ADC. On paper, it looks formidable, a merger of the obedient movement, Kwankwasia, and broader coalition forces with structures already claimed across all 36 states and the FCT. But beneath the momentum lies a more complex story. The race for the ADC ticket is already heating up, with heavyweights like Atiku Abubakar making it clear they are not stepping aside, and others like Rotimi Amechi and Aminu Tambuwal also in the mix. So what exactly is this movement? A genuine grassroots coalition built on shared vision, or a strategic pressure group designed to tilt the balance of power within the opposition? Well, for more on this, I'm joined now from our studios in Lagos by the National Publicity Secretary of the Obi Kwankwaso movement, Justin EJ. Can you hear me, Mr. EJ?
Good evening, Charles. Yes, I can hear you.
For joining us. Let me ask you, first of all, is the Obi Kwankwaso movement a genuine coalition for national reform, or a strategic vehicle to secure the presidential ticket for Peter Obi and Rabiu Kwankwaso within the ADC?
Thank you for that question, Charles. I don't think you can separate those two things one from the other. You need a strategic vehicle in order to be able to deliver strategic reforms. So you cannot choose one from the other. So the answer to the question is yes, it is a strategic vehicle because you do need one to contest for electoral positions. And secondly, yes, the ultimate objective is national reform.
Now, you say you have structures across all 36 states and the FCT. I mean, what does that actually mean in practical terms? Are these real grassroots networks, or just political placeholders, if you like?
Again, Charles, words mean things. Political placeholders, grassroots structures, at the end of the day, you are speaking about human beings playing very specific roles in any organization. So yes, we do have grassroots structures that cascade all the way down to the wards and the unit levels of the electoral map of this country. And this is not a greenfield project per se. As you know, the OK movement stands for the Obi Kwankwaso movement. Now, what we've done, preempting the question I suppose you might probably be asking next, is a fusion of the popular support that both principals have already at the grassroots level. So we are not starting from ground zero. We have a lot of traction to leverage on as we proceed on this project.
Well, as you mentioned there, at the heart of this movement are two strong political figures. Which one of them leads, and who steps aside if it comes to that? Because alliances often collapse at the point of decision. I mean, we've heard that, Peter Obi is getting the ticket and Kwankwaso is his running mate, but we haven't heard that spoken of decisively in the public arena. Have they already agreed who takes the ticket, or is that battle still ahead?
So what we have chosen to concern ourselves with as a movement is the benefits of the combined forces of both human beings, His Excellency Mr. Peter Obi and His Excellency Alhaji Rabiu Kwankwaso. When you study their political history, their track record, you find that there is a lot of similarity, there are a lot of overlaps in their ideologies, there are a lot of overlaps in the things that they believe about how this country should be run. And we believe that the combination of both things is what Nigeria needs at this point in time. Now, are there conversations that are ongoing, which I will not preempt at this conversation? Yes. There are conversations that are ongoing, and in a manner of speaking, I would say, let me say that they are above my pay grade. But that is not central to the issue. What is central to the issue is if both of these men decide to fuse their political forces together, if the party decides that an Obi-Kwankwaso alliance is what, as the Nigerian people are obviously asking for, is the best foot forward in the coming elections, then we are absolutely here to tell everyone and to remind everyone of why that is so. As to the down-to-the-wire decisions, we will leave those announcements to be made by the principals themselves. I will not take it upon myself to do that.
Yeah, but the operative word that I'm hearing from you is if. You're saying if the two sides decide to get together, if the two men decide to come together. So on what basis, I mean, what is the context of you merging the two groups or coming up with an Obi-Kwankwaso movement when you don't even know who's going to have the ticket?
You're proceeding on a false premise, Charles. I didn't say if both men. I said if the party decides that the combination of those two people on one ticket is what it wants to move forward with. That's what I said. I didn't say if both men. Both men have agreed on an alliance. The permutations of that alliance, like I said, because the specific question you asked was, oh, who leads the ticket and who backs up the ticket? And I am saying to you that even if I were privy to that information, I think it is right that the principals themselves will make that announcement by themselves at the appropriate time. And I believe that is something that you would understand.
Well, to be quite clear, you did say at the outset that if they decide that they're going to get together, I mean, that's the whole point of having things said. I mean, it's there, it's for the record. But let's move on from there. Figures like Atiku Abubakar, your mouth is moving, but I can't hear you.
In alliance.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me, Charles?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
So for clarity's sake, if I was misunderstood or if I misstated earlier, both principals have decided to work together, clearly, to avoid, without any equivocation, I am stating that clearly. Both principals have come into an alliance together.
Right, okay. Well, right. Now, figures like Atiku Abubakar have made it clear that they're not stepping down. Is this movement designed to counter him within the party?
That's a very good question. Now, His Excellency Atiku Abubakar and the other political players in the party are very much entitled to their aspirations, and nobody should begrudge them that. We certainly do not. But in every democratic process, as you'll agree with me, people will put forward their aspirations, their ambitions, and it is left to the voting population to decide. It is left to every man to decide for himself, I think I will pitch my tent with this person or that person. And having said that, we are focused on the benefits of an Obi-Kwankwaso combination. We are focused on selling the dream that is a better Nigeria. We are focused on telling the people of Nigeria how much we can achieve if we hand over that ticket to the proper combination of gentlemen in question. That is not taking away anything from Alhaji or anybody else. for that matter, to run. At the end of the day, it's a democratic process, it's a contest, and there are two options that are available here to all players. There's either going to be a consensus or there is going to be a direct primary exercise. Now, those conversations are ongoing. I don't think a final determination has been made. But very quickly, let me add that whichever way the pendulum swings, the OK movement is boldly and loudly in support of a Peter Obi and Alhaji Rabiu Kwankwaso joint ticket. And that is who we will be supporting.
Right. Well, from what I understand, there will be an attempt to reach a consensus. And if that attempt fails, then they will go for primaries. And the way that it is looking, with all the people, the different sort of potential sort of candidates, you know, Atiku Abubakar, Rotimi Amechi, Peter Obi, and all the rest of them, even Aminu Tambuwal, none of them seem to be talking about consensus or giving way. So that raises questions about the kind of unity that will be formed if you have to go into a very disputatious primary, having disagreed about a consensus candidate. And it raises the question of whether the ADC coalition will become inclusive, which is the impression that we're being given, or purely selective, which would make it much more divisive.
So I don't think there's anything in that process that can be predetermined to be disputatious. Obviously, it's a contest, and everybody who submits himself or herself to the contest implicitly submits to also the outcome of that contest. They are not political neophytes. Like you said, there are a lot of political heavyweights in the running. And the expectation is that, the hope is that a consensus position is arrived at. Now, failing that, like you rightly said, we will go on to primaries. The whole point of a coalition is that everybody, what is implicit in a coalition is that everybody cannot be on the ticket. It must narrow down to one person or two people in a joint ticket. Every commitment that has been made by every one of these leaders that I have heard is that whatever the outcome is, they will be supporting whoever gets the ticket. And I think that we should take that into account. I do not think that we can assume, or we should assume, that if one person gets the ticket, then the coalition falls apart. Obviously, coming into the coalition, everybody knows that one person is going to get the ticket, right? So it's sort of foregone conclusion. I have watched the rhetoric coming out of all parties, and I think they're very mature gentlemen that are committed to what the greater goal is, which is a better Nigeria than the one we have today.
Right. Well, let's move beyond the general, you know, the sort of ADC personalities, to the particular, which is the Obi Kwankwaso movement that you're the National Publicity Secretary of. What is the ideological foundation of this movement? What binds obedience and Kwankwasia beyond the desire to win power? Because if it's not rooted in shared principles, isn't this just a temporary alliance of convenience?
Brilliant. Now, as you would have heard, quoting His Excellency Peter Obi, first of all, as you would have heard him say on various fora, he is not running for power for the sake of power itself. It's a means to an end. And what is that end? And this is where the fusion of ideologies between both men come in, and which is what we stand for. We want a Nigeria that works for everybody and not for some people. We want a Nigeria that respects the dignity of the Nigerian person. We want a Nigeria that institutions are allowed to perform their roles without political interference, where we can draw a very distinct line between politics, politicking, and governance. That is not the country we have today. Nobody knows where the line between politicking ends and where governance begins. So it's one long continuum of politics. We reject that. We reject violent elections. We reject violence in the political process. We believe that people can disagree and not be disagreeable. We believe in a Nigeria where safety safety and security of all citizens is guaranteed and seen to be worked for by the government. We want a Nigeria where the voices of the people who are being led are actually taken into account in the formulation of government policies. We want economic policies that are people first and people friendly, not profit oriented, not based on extraction, right? These are the things. We have healthcare policies in the country are not serving the people. These are the things that bring these two gentlemen together. These are the things that we believe in. When we say that a new Nigeria is possible, when we say that Nigeria will be okay, this is what we mean. If we put the right people in the right places, if we stop the typical horse trading and politics for personal benefit, there is simply no other way that this country moves forward if we do not do that. Those are the things, those are the threads that bring the Obi and the Kwankwaso alliance together, and those are the ideals that we stand for.
But of course, your aim is to, head towards 2027. How exactly does this Obi Kwankwaso movement intend to convert enthusiasm, because you're clearly enthusiastic, but how does it intend to convert that into votes, especially in regions where both Obi and Kwankwaso have struggled to break through historically?
That is the beauty of this alliance, actually, Charles. You just touched on something very important. And as I said when we began, we are not reinventing the wheel here. The Obedient movement, which is a support group that has chosen His Excellency Peter Obi, has been doing a lot of grassroots work. The Kwankwaso movement, which needs no introduction to Nigerians, has a very strong presence in the north, with Kano as the epicenter, right? The OK movement is not trying to displace these two movements or even replace them. What we are actually doing is drawing on the passion and the structures and the elements of work that have been done at the grassroots between these two movements and creating a joint platform that allows for expression of our combined vision, right? Which is a joint Obi-Atiku presidency, ultimately come 2027. So the past 3 years after 2023, what these two movements have done on their own is not lost to us. We're having joint consultations, we're having joint meetings, right? And we are going to be pushing forward as an alliance of both. We'd call the OK movement, if you like, a special purpose vehicle for the expression of those ideals and those aspirations for the movements that have come together.
Well, I'm sure you know that the Kwankwaso movement is concentrated in Kano. Kwankwasia is concentrated in Kano, not necessarily across the whole of the north, because there are other competing personalities. I mean, Atiku is there with his own followers, Aminu Tambuwal and all the rest of them. Mr. Kwankwaso's concentration in terms of support is in Kano, and we're now also hearing that that support is split because he's left the NNPP, which was essentially the party around which the Kwankwaso movement coalesced, and the governor of Kano State, who was, if you like, part of his team, has also left. So there is a division in terms of the people and the votes that he can muster in that part of Nigeria. And talking about the Obedient movement, they reshaped the conversation in 2023. Nobody can deny that. But then they fell short of victory. So what I'm trying to understand is all these empty spaces that need to be filled, what will you do differently this time?
Okay. The first thing I want to respond to is the last thing that you said before you asked the question. The Obedient movement and Peter Obi did not fall short. We achieved our aim, which was to win the 2023 elections, and we did win that election, and it was stolen. And if anything, we are way more enthused about that objective and what we need to do differently this time. Coming back to the question, the whole point, like I said when I first responded, You can call Kano the epicenter of the Kwankwaso movement, but you cannot objectively say that it exists only in Kano, right? And you cannot also say that because there has been a fallout of certain people defecting from a political party, and therefore the movement itself is fractured. That's like saying that Peter Obi left, just to draw an analogy, that's like saying that Mr. Peter Obi left the Labour Party, and then because of that, the obedient movement has fallen into disarray. Nothing could be farther from the truth. The Kwankwaso movement is coalesced, in your own words earlier, around His Excellency Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, and nothing has changed that in the recent past, and I don't think anything is going to change that in the future. Ditto for Mr. Peter Obi. And that is why I said the OK movement now becomes a medium of expression for the fusion of the energies and the structures of both movements. So this is the best foot forward for us, coming from the obedient side of things, coming from the Kwankwaso side of things, and pushing forward on the joint ticket. We are going to harness the energies of both as we head towards the elections. Are there structures in place? Yes, there are structures in place. But no matter how much we say it, people still tend to talk about, you know, the kind of rhetoric we saw in 2023. Oh, there are 4 people tweeting in a room. Well, hello, we all saw what happened. And if you think that this has no weight, go check out the sea of red caps up north and watch what is going to be happening in this space in the next few months, especially once we get into campaign season proper. All of the questions will be answered and nobody will be left in doubt as to what we are doing and what we're able to achieve.
Of course, even though you are the National Publicity Secretary of this new movement, you are, in fact, an obedient. You're not a member of the Kwankwaso movement. So to some extent, what you can say about them and for them is limited. And in Nigerian politics, I mean, you're not a northerner either, are you? I mean, in Nigerian politics, there is that ethnic, sort of tribal and religious elements that always comes in. Nigerian elections, I'm sure you know, which is one of the reasons why you're seeking an alliance, are often defined by these very factors. How do you realistically overcome that, since you don't have any direct control over the Kwankwaso movement? I mean, there's no guarantee at this point. I mean, I don't know if you've got any figures of how many Kwankwaso people have actually officially joined the movement that you're talking about. Because, I mean, in a country where there's a lot about identity politics, that's a very important issue, isn't it?
You are correct, Charles, to a certain extent, that in the political rhetoric in Nigeria, religion and ethnic orientation have become way, way too prevalent in the discourse. But here's the reality that everyday Nigerians live, Charles, and I will come back to the core of your question. Today, I filled up my tank. I intended to fill up my gas tank, and I spent 50,000 naira and it wasn't full, because the pump price was 1,300 and some fractions, right? That has no bearing. The fuel attendant didn't ask me what ethnicity I am or what religion I believe in. The point I'm making is that the sufferings of Nigerians, the travails that Nigerians are going through under the failed administration of the failed policies of the Tinubu administrations do not lend themselves to those kinds of conversations. We are united in the suffering. Children went to write JAMB on Saturday and never made it. This is the reality of the country we live in. Nobody in their right minds should be thinking along the lines of tribe, and religion. But like you said, it has become a feature in Nigerian politics, and hopefully we will get to a point someday when it will not be the centerpiece. But is it the reality of the discourse today? Yes, to a large extent it is, and it would be naive to run away from that. But I'm just saying what I'm saying as a reminder to people about the things that actually matter. Competence, capacity, and character transcend tribe, right? They transcend religion. The man who slaughters people who he has kidnapped into the bush on some roadside doesn't ask them what religion, what tribe. The suffering is ubiquitous. It's common to all of us. The pain of poverty, the pain of poor medical health care does not respect religious profession or ethnic affiliation, Mr. Charles. And this is the reality that Nigerians must face up to. And we must allow our politics and our democracy to mature up to the extent that we begin to put first things first and not allow certain considerations to cloud our objective realities.
Right, let me ask you this, Mr. EJ. What happens if this alliance fractures? Do you have a plan B, or does the entire movement collapse with it? Because, as I said, I mean, you're neither obedient nor Kwankwaso. You're a new movement that's trying to fuse the two groups together.
That would not be, excuse me, that would not be a correct characterization. There's a nuance that you've missed there. Earlier on, when you asked the penultimate question, you said, judging by the look, that I must be obedient. And you were right. I am the South-South spokesperson for the obedient movement. Currently, I still retain that function of service. And so I have not ceased to be obedient because I am working in the OK movement. If anything, I'm an ambassador of the obedient movement to the OK movement, and that's the way that you need to look at it, right? We are not working at cross purposes. Everything that I do in my current, in the hat that I'm wearing as I sit here as publicity secretary for the OK movement, cannot be divorced from my role, my active role in the obedient movement. Same for my colleagues who are coming from the Kwankwaso movement. What we are creating is a synergy of both groups, essentially.
So why launch this? Sorry, we missed the last thing you said there. Can you repeat the last words you said?
Oh, I said I just wanted to make sure that we are clear in that nuanced understanding of the relationship between the obedient movement, the OK movement, and the Kwankwaso movement.
Okay, well, thanks for that clarification. Why
either or? Yeah.
Right. Why launch this movement now? Are you... sorry, can I just ask you a question? Because I keep seeing your lips moving and I can't hear you. If I'm talking, we won't be able to hear you. So you've got to wait for me to finish. My question is, why launch this movement now? Are you shaping the race early or reacting to growing pressure within the ADC? Because that is your first port of call before you then reach out to the rest of the country.
Oh, yes. I mean, you can attribute motive, Mr. Charles, but everything happens in sequences of time. Are we under pressure? No. Maybe we are the ones applying pressure, who knows? But at the point where an accord had been reached between the two principals, some of us began to think about how best to now sell the joint ticket, as it were. How do we advance the conversation of the joint ticket? Now, as we all know, the obedient movement is Peter Obi, the Kwankwaso movement is Rabiu Kwankwaso. But here we have these two gentlemen coming together. And so, where the intention is not to collapse the obedient movement or the Kwankwaso movement because they must maintain their distinct entities, we then needed a vehicle that allows the expression of the aspirations of both men that we support in these two different movements. Does that put the party under pressure? We would hope that it is not received as pressure. We would hope that our advocacy, which is what it is at the end of the day, we would hope that our advocacy is received in good faith as people who are speaking for what they see to be the best option, in our opinion, for what the party should put up. When you go for a competition, when you are in any competitive process, you put your best players first. You put your best foot forward. And it is our considered view that the combination of Mr. Peter Obi and Alhaji Rabiu Kwankwaso is an election-winning combination. No holds barred.
On that note, I want to thank you very much indeed for taking the time to talk to us and to explain this new movement that you are representing here tonight. Justin EJ is the National Publicity Secretary of the Obi Kwankwaso movement, and he was talking to me from our studios in Lagos. Thank you very much indeed.